Good morning. Day 7, 1 week in. Um, Feeling pretty good. I'm not sure if I've said that at the start of all of my videos, so I suppose that would be a thing to look at. But this morning, I have, I guess I have a decent amount to talk about. Um, 1 second. So, last night, we were talking. I guess I was in an irritable state, and I noticed that along the way with the detoxing of marijuana, my familiarity with it, you always run into some kind of um, patch where you get irritable, whether it's the dopamine that's low and the fact that you don't have kind of like an outlet for it. Usually, the first week, I get this sort of. It's almost like the body's like, "Whoa, we're not getting any," and it creates more dopamine. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, so I have no idea. But it feels like in the first week you have these massive highs and these massive lows, and if you can kind of keep the highs going along, it actually doesn't feel that bad. But then eventually that sort of runs out, and you start back into the normality, the mundanity of recovery, and that's where you start to get, or at least where I start to experience irritability in a big way. And first half of the day went really well, very productive, got everything done. But then in the afternoon, our recycling didn't get picked up. It's snowy outside, so it's difficult to move the bin a lot. Um, and we've had a bit of a shit of a time with looking for houses. It seems like the market's like pretty crazy, and I'm sort of hesitant to get into it. I don't feel like there's any reason for me to spend 30 grand over asking price for a house that's only marginally better than where we live right now. Um, But yeah, so I got irritated last night, and I noticed that. And combining that with the video game withdrawal, I think there's going to be a longer period of irritation than what I'm used to dealing with. With the marijuana, that irritation would usually last for a week, maybe a couple of weeks at the most. But this time around, combining it with the lack of video games to kind of like smooth those things over, I will most likely end up having a longer period of irritability. Of course, the good thing is that without having video games, it means that I'm going to end up being far more productive, which I'm pretty happy about. But again, you it's hard to be happy about that kind of stuff until it's happened. And so far, all I've experienced is that sort of rough irritability. However, mainly where I'm at now is kind of dealing with something that's related to the marijuana. Last night I went to bed and I slept. I slept fine. There were no sweats. I did have one vivid dream about watching pornography at boarding school with some people looking in through the window, which was very bizarre. And they were making fun of me, so I was feeling embarrassed by it. But at the same time, for some reason, it was like I was watching it to review it, or there was a need to watch it. I didn't feel sexual in the dream as much as it felt more exploratory. But anyway, I was made to feel embarrassed by it. When I woke up, I was like, that was weird. But thankfully, I wasn't drenched in sweat, so that was a positive for that. Um, but one of the things that I noticed, and this started maybe a couple of months ago after I started doing these really, well, let's just put it this way, alternatively sourced dabs. Those of you who are not familiar, it's basically a carbon solvent extracted oil or wax mixture that's created from marijuana that comes out in these like an oil or wax or shatter type stuff like ice. And you smoke it in a dab rig. You heat something up to a hot temperature, let it cool down a little bit, and then you put the oil in it, and it vaporizes or incinerates or whatever you want to call it. And you inhale that, and you get a much, much higher concentration of THC from it than you would from, say, smoking a joint or smoking a bowl. And I had been doing that for about 4 months fairly regularly, and by fairly regularly I mean between 4 or 5 times a day, sort of re-upping a dose. And I wasn't going crazy. I'm not doing a gram on a dab or anything like that. I mean, I was portioning it out, but it was up to 2 grams a week. And the stuff that I was getting was alternatively sourced. and I noticed that my breath was getting shorter. I was actually having trouble catching my breath just walking up 2 flights of stairs. And I'm a pretty fit guy. I can bench my body weight for reps. I can squat twice my body weight, and I can deadlift more than twice my body weight. So I'm a fairly fit guy. I don't run, but I do a lot of exercise. And so running out of breath at the top of 2 stairs was not. Let's put it this way: if you've never had to deal with that before, and now all of a sudden you do have to deal with it, it's frightening. And then exercise has been getting harder. I've been much more short of breath when I'm exercising as well. And so I had a feeling it had something to do with the dabs, because I had noticed how dirty they were, how sort of toxic smelling they were compared to dispensary provided dabs where they actually extract a lot of the stuff out. And what I came across was this term called lipid pneumonia, which is where lipids, being waxes or oils, lipid pneumonia is where you get waxes or oils that are left in the oil or the concentrate, that when you vape, those waxes or oils get into your lungs and essentially cause the same sorts of effects as what you would have with pneumonia. And again, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, so I'm not going to go straight into it, but one of the main things are shortness of breath, fatigue, lightheadedness, and potentially, irritability and loss of appetite. So I definitely have more motivation, but thinking back on how much I was doing, I think I probably damaged my lungs a little bit. I'm not a big guy. I'm only 5'9", so my lungs aren't exactly 6-foot tall guy lungs. And the amount that I had smoked and the quality of the stuff that I was smoking, I think had done a little bit of damage. Not permanent damage, but I think it had done some damage. And so dealing with that has been rough. It's actually been really rough, and it's been an ego check, because like last night I actually had to stop. I had to stop working out. I couldn't catch my breath, and I was starting to panic while I was doing just a basic, like lunges and overhead presses. And I've never felt that before working out. As you can tell, I'm not an old person, so a little bit of exercise should be fine, particularly given that I have already been exercising for a long time. So, but anyway, it feels bad to know that it's happened, but it feels good to know that I'm out of the woods. And from what I can tell, most of the literature seems to suggest that as long as it wasn't a massively extended period of time, or it wasn't like a really high intensity level of abuse, that the lungs will repair themselves, and that I'll end up getting my wind back. So that's another one of those slow burn things that I have to look forward to. Hopefully being able to climb stairs without having to stop and take a breath at the top, that would be really great. However, if that continues, most likely I will end up going to the doctor for that, and maybe getting some chest x-rays done. I'm giving it another few weeks to see whether or not I improve, and if I don't, then I'll be going to a doctor to look at it. Another thing today, no, I won't get into that. As far as the theme that's been coming up from the last few days, the theme has been perseverance. I've heard it from my parents. I've heard it from older friends of mine who live in Columbus. I've heard it from, realtors or the realtor, our realtor, and I've heard it from our friends. All, this house buying thing is about luck. It's about persevering. So I'm going to take that theme and try to run with it with everything. Perseverance isn't about doing something that's always exciting. It's about doing things that you don't necessarily want to do, but doing it anyway because you recognize that there's going to be a benefit to it. So I guess the theme I want to lead with today is perseverance, and just trying to sit down and nut things out, and then getting into the doing of those things, rather than trying to find ways to get distracted. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Again, it's 1 week, it's 7 days. If any of you are watching this, if anyone's watching this and you hit 7 days, give yourself a reward. Don't make it a big reward. Don't go out and smoke a joint. But give yourself a reward. Go get an ice cream, or buy yourself a lunch, or if there's a toy or something you want to get. let me rephrase that, not toy, if we're getting away from gaming. Something that you want, maybe a tool or a pair of shoes or whatever. But recognize the accomplishment and recognize it in relation to the fact that it is really only 1 week. 7 days isn't a long time, but it's significant. So try to reward yourself in relation to the fact that it's only been 7 days. And then when you get to 14 days, maybe you do a little bigger reward, or maybe your thing is week, month, year, or maybe it's week and then every month. I don't know. You'll have to figure that out for yourself based on what your experience with quitting has been. And for those of you who are still quitting gaming and who have made it and the intention to quit gaming, the best advice I can offer after having done it for 7 days is throw yourself into your work. Make big long to-do lists and then just work on your work. I found that it made me feel good yesterday, and it certainly helped me be more productive. All right, well, that's enough for that. Talk to myself tomorrow.